Good morning, everybody. Yes, this is indeed the People's Channel, and you're watching To The Point on GB News. Me, Patrick Christie, and Mercy Moroki on your TV, radio and online.
Yes, and we're here with you until midday. We have loads on the agenda today. As usual, we've got the latest on crime and terrorism, on tube strikes, we have a royal update and much more as well across the programme.
Indeed, and we want to hear your views, as usual. They're the most important part of the show, so make sure that you get them come fizzing in. GB Views at gbnews.uk.
Yes, that's all coming up in just a moment, but first, your morning headlines.
Good morning, it's 1 minute past 10. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The Treasury is under pressure to bring benefit and pension rises forward to help those struggling with the cost of living. Think tank The Resolution Foundation says that waiting for next April's annual increase will result in more debt for many families. Last night, Rishi Sunak warned of a perfect storm of supply shocks hitting Britain in the coming months. That on the same day inflation reached a 40-year high. The Chancellor also said the government's ready to do more to help struggling families. Staying with the rising cost of living, the policing minister has said officers shouldn't let shoplifters go if they're stealing food out of desperation. That's in response to the Chief Inspector of Constabulary, Andy Kirk. He suggested police should use their discretion when handling cases involving desperate shoplifters. Kit Malthouse, though, says the law should be applied equally to all.
I have great respect for Andy, and I suspect his words have been taken out of context, as they say. I find that a bit old-fashioned thinking. I mean, from my point of view, the primary rule is that justice should be blind. Also, this idea that crime will fluctuate with the economy is a bit old-fashioned thinking, I'm afraid. We've seen over the last 20 years points at which crime has risen when times have been good, and when it's fallen when times have been less good. Yeah, we now need to be smart about acquisitive crime, burglary, robbery, car crime, and drive them down even further.
The United Nations is warning that Russia's invasion of Ukraine could soon cause a global food crisis that lasts or could last for years. Its Secretary-General says the situation could lead to tens of millions of people living in poorer countries facing food insecurity and famine. Antonio Guterres has appealed to Russia to allow the safe and secure export of grain stored in Ukrainian ports. Russia and Ukraine account for nearly a third of global wheat supplies. The wars led to soaring global prices. Meanwhile, Moscow claims that over 750 more Ukrainian fighters have surrendered in the Russian-held port city of Mariupol. Negotiations have been ongoing between the two sides to evacuate soldiers held up in the Azovstal steelworks. According to Russia, it brings the total number of Ukrainian fighters to leave the plant since Monday to 1,730. It's unknown how many remain. Ukrainian officials have declined to comment on the fate of the soldiers. The government failed in its duty of care to doctors during the coronavirus pandemic. That's according to the British Medical Association. Its own review into the government's handling of the crisis highlights the lack of personal protective equipment in the early stages. It found that more than 4 in 5 doctors said they didn't feel adequately protected during the first wave of the virus. Royal Mail says it'll need to increase its prices and cut costs amid rising inflation. The firm said it needs to cut costs by more than £350 million, that as it faces higher wage demands and steeper energy and fuel costs. Royal Mail insists it's not planning further job losses after announcing in January that 700 managerial positions would go. NHS England says checks for prostate cancer have hit an all-time high. Urgent referrals for urological cancers reached a record level in March, with more than 24,000 men checked. Around 550,000 people checked their risk of developing the disease online during the 6 weeks of an awareness campaign. Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall have arrived in Canada for day 2 of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. They met with the country's Ukrainian community and attended a ceremony to honour Canada's war dead in Ottawa. It's the second day of their royal tour, which celebrates Queen Elizabeth's 7 decades on the throne. And archaeologists in England have a new mystery to solve. They've just unearthed a rare stone circle at a prehistoric ritual site in Cornwall. Aerial photos show the long-buried structure resembling a crooked horseshoe, but the meaning behind it is still unclear. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to Patrick and Mercy with To The Point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie on your TV, radio, online and, of course, on our GB News app. Here's what's coming up.
Well, yesterday we broke the news that a 13-year-old boy had been charged with terrorism offences after sharing Islamist material. He's believed to be one of the youngest alleged extremists to be charged with terrorism in the UK. So we'll be joined by Dr. Akiba San, an expert on social integration and indeed a friend of the channel, to discuss.
Yes, and more concerning news coming out of Ukraine. There's fears about radiation after fires erupt at the infamous exclusion zone surrounding the Chernobyl nuclear plant. This, of course, was the infamous site of one of the world's worst nuclear disasters, while Colonel Hamish de Breton-Gordon, who specialises in biological and nuclear incidents, will join us.
Indeed, and today is the final day of this so-called Wagatha Christie trial in London. Our reporter Ellie Costello will be there to tell us how we can expect this saga to finally end.
Yes, and we have all of that coming up and much more as well across the programme here till midday, as usual, as we say. And you can get in touch with your views, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, Patrick gives his views on Harry and Meghan.
So, Meghan and Harry are the new Kardashians, apparently, only arguably even less talented. They had grand plans, didn't they, when they turned their backs on royal life and indeed this country, but actually they're just low-rent, high-maintenance reality TV goons. The Montecito monarchs are yet to create any content whatsoever for Netflix, despite penning a $100 million deal with the streaming service. And in fact, Meghan Markle's animated show Pearl, which was planned to centre on the adventures of a 12-year-old girl who was inspired by influential women from history, yes, well, that got canned, didn't it? And it's not really hard to see why that was cancelled. I think I'd rather watch a rerun of Crossroads. In fact, I'd probably rather stick pins in my eyes. Apparently, though, the show was only in the development stage, a bit like Harry's brain. But now, they're going to be followed around by a TV crew as part of a Kardashian-style show. Great, another show about phenomenally wealthy, vacuous Hollywood celebrities. Look, the money's great, and to be honest with you, I'd probably do absolutely anything for $100 million. But, actually, it's a sign of how far they've fallen, certainly Harry anyway. It's really strange for a couple who wanted to find freedom and escape the public eye to sign up to do a show that involved essentially having a camera crew follow them around the whole time. It's almost like they don't actually want privacy, isn't it? It's almost like they just want to be rich and famous. They've swapped the true high-caliber class of the royal family for plastic novelty fakery. And the thing was as well, the British public really loved Harry, like really genuinely loved him. And he's turned his back on that for people like James Corden and Oprah or Ellen DeGeneres, or however you pronounce her surname. Let's just see how long those people stick around when things start to go south for Harry and Meghan, shall we? They were supposed to be going their own way and doing meaningful things, when instead they're doing something that's akin to the Kardashians or, frankly, the Real Housewives of Cheshire. Supposedly, the Netflix show is going to come out in conjunction with Harry's tell-all book. Well, I'm not sure how much his book deal is, but it does turn out that you can put a price on betraying your family, making your elderly grandma's life difficult and alienating the country of your birth. I don't know about you, I have absolutely no desire whatsoever to watch a fly-on-the-wall show about a B-list soap actress and Meghan Markle's bag carrier. Yes, it may be true that Harry and Meghan are rich, but actually, I think the way they've gone about speaking their truth, finding their freedom, is cheap. Yeah, I don't think I'll be watching it.
Not a fan then.
No.
I take it.
No.
I'm trying to remember who I said this to. It was a couple of years ago. But I said, I bet you they will end up doing a Keeping Up with the Kardashian-style thing. I predicted this because the way they were going, you could just tell they wanted to be a brand, basically. They didn't want to be royalty. They want to be a brand. And as critical as I am and have been about them, they can do what they want. It's a free world. Well, it's not a free world, but it's a free country in America. It's a free country here. They can do what they want. What I don't like is the hypocrisy that they've displayed over the last few months, over the last few years. They pretend they're really in touch with people, really in touch with disadvantaged people of the world, when in fact they are anything but. And they love to preach, don't they?
Yeah.
So if they did everything they're doing now but refrained from the preaching to people about how to live their lives, then I'd be pretty much OK with them. But it's that hypocrisy.
It's a hypocrisy for me as well. And like you said, you know, that idea, we all remember this, don't we, when Harry played a polo match and took a private jet. You know, please lecture me more on environmentalism, my good man. I just find it all a little bit on the nose. But yes, I woke up this morning to various headlines about this new supposed fly-on-the-wall documentary for Netflix. I just thought, actually, how cheap? I know it's not cheap for Netflix, it costs them $100 million, but how cheap this is, really. And I do wonder as well, you know, for people who said that they were desperate to escape the kind of public eye and desperate to all that, well, actually now it's actually been reduced to sticking a camera on the wall of your kitchen while you walk around and, you know, he probably just gets Meghan whatever she wants. Yeah,
and my prediction is that it will put them in a worse light in the eyes of the British public, actually, because people it will all seem vacuous and fake and staged. Obviously, they're not going to be their authentic selves. They're very much going to be playing up to the camera.
Absolutely.
So it would just reinforce everything everybody already thinks.
I think that's the thing. I think people can just see through fakery, can't they? And so, you know, if people are putting an act on or they're, like, kind of just doing things to try and be a bit worthy or whatever, I think people see straight through that. I think you're right. You've got the potential anyway for it to emerge quite badly. It'd be interesting, wouldn't it, if William and Kate did one for, like, a day or two and that got much better ratings.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? That's the thing, though. It will get good ratings. That's undoubtable, I think. But whether it will make them more popular in this country or not is another entire different question. But now, moving on, yesterday we broke the news to you that a 13-year-old boy had been charged with terrorism offences after sharing Islamist material. The boy was arrested at an address in West London on Tuesday on suspicion of disseminating terrorist material and has been bailed to a date in mid-June.
Well, the boy is among one of the youngest ever alleged extremists to be charged with terrorism in the UK. Now, last year, a teenager with far-right views who committed his first terror offence at age 13, so started young, was sentenced to a 24-month youth rehabilitation order.
Yes, well, Dr. Rakib Ehsan is a research analyst and writer specialising in matters of social cohesion, race relations and public safety. Joins us now. Good morning, Rakib. Thanks for joining us on this. This is particularly concerning. One of the first questions I asked when our Home and Security editor, Mark White, broke the news to us yesterday was, 13 seems incredibly young to me. I mean, is this an exceptional case, this particular age? Or actually, is this kind of thing happening under our nose amongst kids?
Well, I'd make the point, Mercy, that when we're looking at recent figures, there is greater teenage involvement on this front. Up to the year to March 2021, 13% of suspects arrested for terrorism-related offences were under the age of 18. And that was an increase from the previous year's figure of 5%. So you can see there that this is a growing problem. And that was something that was said by members of the Met Police Counter-Terrorism Command, that increasingly they are seeing cases of teenage involvement in extremism-related activity. And this is something that is perhaps a knock-on effect, you could say, from the COVID-19 restrictions. Under lockdown, public authorities have made the point that under lockdown that there were accelerated forms of radicalization, especially among socially isolated teenagers. And I think that's something that we need to focus in the post-pandemic era.
Yeah, can I just ask you this question? Because we have been discussing far-right terrorism and obviously Islamist terrorism just this week alone because of some major events that have been happening. I do want to ask you, because of obviously you're an ethnic minority, as am I, what do you feel is more of a threat to you personally, sort of from a personal perspective? Because I don't feel under threat from far-right nationalism at all, even though I'm probably one of the people that it would affect the most, being an ethnic minority. But I do very much feel at risk sometimes of Islamist terrorism.
Well, I'd make the point that being of Bangladeshi Muslim origin, I would never trivialise the threat of neo-Nazism and white supremacism. But if you're looking in the British context, the prevailing terror threat is very much presented by Islamist extremism. You see that when you look at the ideological composition of the MI5's broader terror-related watch list. You look at that when you see the breakdown ideologically of the prison population, prisoners who have been convicted of terror-related offences. And ultimately, you look at the recent research, it's very clear that the principal terror threat in the West is presented by religious extremism, and that is almost exclusively radical Islamist terrorism. And I think that that point really needs to be made. And if you make that point, that is not a form of anti-Muslim prejudice. If you actually see survey data, Mercy, the British Muslim population is very similar to the general population when it comes to levels of concern over the threat of Islamist extremism.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it is interesting to see that people are still getting involved with this from a young age, though. I mean, do you think that enough is done in schools to try to steer children away from this? Because I don't know the specifics of this case, of course, but, you know, if a child sees something, this person is a child, right, it's 13 years old. If a child sees something online, they might not be entirely aware that, you know, if you search for something on Google, for example, it can send off a signal, this, that and the other. Maybe we should be trying to educate them a bit better.
Well, I think that the great amount of work has to be done, Patrick, in the post-pandemic era, in terms of developing that multi-agency approach when it comes to helping young, vulnerable people, divert them away from extremism-related influences and the threat of radicalization. If the failure to do so could have very negative consequences for our local communities. And more broadly, I think that in the post-pandemic age, we have to have a very thorough assessment of the social impact of lockdown and COVID-19 restrictions, especially in the counter-extremism field.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to ask you about something as well. When someone's as young as 13, Rakib, do you think they've got a good chance of being rehabilitated? Because I'm very, very sceptical about some of the adults, for example, who do decide to go down these particular routes, whether or not they could ever be properly rehabilitated. But surely maybe a 13-year-old can.
I think that, Patrick, in that kind of situation, we need to look at the severity of that particular case. We need to see to what extent a particular individual, how advanced they are on the path towards radicalization. And I think that what we have to do, we have to look at that on a case-by-case basis. But I ultimately believe that when it comes to other forms of crimes, terror-related offences, it carries those ideological elements, which mean that we have to be very hard-headed when it comes to looking at the chances of rehabilitation and helping individuals detach themselves from fundamentalist ideologies.
Look, Rakib, thank you very much. As always, Dr. Rakib Ehsan, there, of course, who specialises in race relations, public security, etc., etc., etc. Just whizzing you through there, this case now. I wish it was a shocking case, but sadly nothing really shocks me anymore when it comes to terrorism in this country. A 13-year-old has been arrested on suspicion, anyway, of disseminating Islamist material. And, yeah, you would have thought that in this day and age now people would be a bit more switched on than that.
Yeah, I mean, my question is, what on earth are the parents doing? Because when you talk about sort of adult extremists and Islamist terrorists, you know, they're adults, aren't they, really? But a 13-year-old, you know, we're talking year 8, I think, here, year 7, year 8, year 9. That's somebody who shouldn't even really be on social media and things like that. The idea that they've gone out and could have found this material, allegedly, of whatever it was, it's quite shocking to me. It raises serious questions about where the parents were in all of this and how much supervision they had over what they were looking at.
Well, absolutely. But, yes, a lot of people are actually getting in touch about the parents anyway, saying that, not these more specifically, but in general, really, saying that actually, you know, they need to step up a bit. Why not mention the parents? Well, there you go, Peter, we're way ahead of you there. They should be the bedrock of prevention. The state can only do so much. And that's true, especially when it comes to kids, right? You do have to question whether or not parents are doing enough to stop children going towards this material.
Yes, absolutely. Keep your views coming in, gbviews@gbnews.uk. And after the break, we'll be talking to a former army commander and chemical and biological weapons expert about fires around the Chernobyl nuclear plant in Ukraine and the threat it could actually pose to the rest of Europe, really. But that's after the break.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A fine start for most of us following last night's heavy rain in places. Warm sunny spells with just some showers remaining in the far northwest. We've seen some lively weather go through overnight as weather fronts cross the country from the west. High pressure is now building from the south, and so for the vast majority, actually, it's a fine morning. Sunny spells. 1 or 2 showers still possible towards the southeast for a time. Even these get out of the way. And then really showers by the afternoon will be confined to western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, where it will be cloudier and breezier. But for the vast majority, for the rest of Scotland, for England and Wales, sunny spells, light winds, and feeling pleasant enough in that sunshine, with temperatures reaching 23 in London, 19 in Cardiff, 20 in Glasgow, 18 in Belfast. Now, through the rest of the afternoon and into the evening, we're going to see further clear spells for a time for many, further showers for Western Scotland and Northern Ireland. They die away for a time overnight, but in the south, well, our attention turns to the continent, where once again some showery rain will start to move in, so that by the end of the night, actually quite a cloudy picture in the south and across central parts of the UK. 12 or 13 degrees here, 9 to 11 with clear spells for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Then during Friday morning, outbreaks of rain or showers for many southern parts of the country, and the threat of some intense thunderstorms just passing by the southeast, most likely staying just far enough away, but we'll keep an eye on those. And for the rest of the country, it's rain or showers moving in from the west and temperatures returning to around average for the time of year. Saturday brings with it plenty of fine weather, particularly in the south, still 1 or 2 showers for Scotland and Northern Ireland. And Sunday, I think we'll see a few more showers pushing in from the west, temperatures around average.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's 2 questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. It's 10:24. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie, and Mercy Murky on GB News, the People's News channel, of course. And we're live on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, now there's fears for the Chernobyl nuclear plant, and they've surged after a forest near the exclusion zone erupted in flames, with emergency services battling to extinguish the huge blaze. Now, more than a dozen firefighters and 4 units of equipment were involved in battling to put out the massive fire, which is now under control, thankfully.
Yeah, good stuff. It's finally back under control. But back in 2020, before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, there were a record amount of forest fires in the area. Now, it's believed that this recent blaze was caused by rubbish and not by the plant itself. But are forest fires a risk to the radiation in Chernobyl and wider public safety at large. Well, Colonel Hamish de Bresson-Gordon is a former commander of UK and NATO chemical, biological and nuclear forces. Gosh, what a business card you've got, my good man. And he joins us now to talk to us about this. Should we all be very worried? Are we all going to choke to death on noxious nuclear fumes, or is everything OK?
Patrick and Mercy, very good morning. Thanks for having me on. I don't think there is immediate problem or immediate danger. There are elevated levels of radiation around Europe. We know after the Russians recklessly attacked Chernobyl a few months ago, they dug a lot of trenches, and there are reports that up to 100 Russian soldiers have died from radiation poisoning. What that has done, though, is put a lot of radiation higher up on the surface. And the fire, again, that creates turmoil, creates turbulence, and up into the atmosphere will go a certain amount of radiation. I think it's, the juxtaposition between nuclear power potentially saving the planet from global warming or destroying it is very stark in Ukraine. We've seen the Russians attack nuclear power stations, creating a hazard. This fire is, I don't think, a large hazard, but they attacked a major power station in the south, and if that had gone off, we would have certainly felt that in Europe. Let's not forget that when Chernobyl exploded in the 1980s, we had very high levels of radiation in North Wales. And really this underwrites, I personally think nuclear power is the future and the way to save the planet. It really concerns me that Putin is threatening us with nuclear strike. But what we must make sure is that we've got a comprehensive security network to make sure that any environmental hazard is kept to the minimum. Because actually radiation, it sounds terrible, but there's a lot of it about, and our human bodies can take a certain amount, but it's important to regulate it and work out exactly how much we've had so that it then doesn't become a problem.
Yeah, and I want to talk about something you just alluded to there, which is Putin perhaps using nuclear power and nuclear weapons as a threat. How safe are we from perhaps future threats from Russia to basically nuke the West? They have threatened that before. Are we prepared? Is the West prepared for any sorts of threats like that Russia might make?
Well, Mercy, that is a huge question. And I think of very great interest to all of us. Personally, I believe that our own nuclear weapons have kept the peace, and that is preventing Putin from using nuclear weapons either in Ukraine or against that. But it's, this man is a terror, is a bully, and only understands strength. So we must continue to make it absolutely certain to Putin that either if he tries to explode at any other nuclear power stations or uses even what we call battlefield nuclear weapons, it's a bit of anathema. People say they're small nuclear weapons. They're still a massive bang with a massive potential fallout, that we will act, and he needs to know that. As far as how well are we protected in this country, well, back in the Cold War, way before you guys, I'm sure, were around, everybody knew what to do if there was a nuclear attack. And, I think a lot of people today think if there's a nuclear attack, that's it, we'll all get killed. Well, we certainly won't. There's an awful lot of things that we can do to protect ourselves. But absolutely the main thing we can do to protect ourselves is to make sure that the Russians don't use them. And we need to be strong. And Putin needs to know that we will act if he goes near that. And I think things like Finland and Sweden joining NATO is only a good thing, because that is putting more power, more pressure on Putin to make sure that he doesn't use these dreadful weapons.
Just a quick one, actually, sorry. But I was talking to a Russian yesterday, and they very legitimately are of the opinion that the Ukrainians are basically child-killing Nazis. That's the view that they had about it. That's the propaganda that's been put out there. But she's based in this country, this woman, and that's a massive concern. If the general Russian population really does think that, that is a concern, isn't it?
Oh, it is a huge concern. I mean, the Russian propaganda and disinformation is legion. You might remember after the Salisbury attack, the chemical attack where I'm talking to you from now, the Russians put out so much disinformation and even tried to persuade us that actually it was the British Prime Minister who had done the attack. Now, the educated people like this Russian are believing some of the spin coming out of Moscow, is just shocking. We already know there are hundreds, if not thousands, of war crimes being committed by Russian troops in Ukraine. I personally know an awful lot of people in Ukraine, and this is certainly not the case. These are not child killers. They are not Nazis. The president is actually of Jewish extraction. The fact that he could be a Nazi is repulsive. And I think it's very important, and hopefully, GBNews and others are putting out the truth so that people in Russia will start realize the war crimes that have been committed in their name and will do something about it. And, finally, if I can say a bit about the grain that Russia
please do.
is getting out at the moment, that could potentially kill millions of people in Africa and other poorer countries, because that's where they get this grain from. And Putin not allowing it to move. And I get incredibly frustrated with the UN and its leader, Anton Guterres, only overnight saying, let's get this grain out. To me, the only way to get this grain out, because Putin will not allow it, is to get UN peacekeepers in there and to escort it out. And those peacekeepers should be protected by a UN fly zone. Now, everybody will say this is far too much of a risk. Well, is it? Are we going to stand by and let millions of people starve to death in poorer countries of the world, or are we actually going to do something about it? I personally believe that we should, and it's worth the risk.
Yes, well, indeed, Colonel Hamish de Bretton-Gordon, thank you so much for talking us through that. And you mentioned the UN there. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says he is in intense contact with Russia, Ukraine, Turkey, the United States and the EU in an effort to get that grain out. So hopefully they will be able to do so.
Well, fingers crossed. Yes, it is an interesting situation, that, isn't it? Because that could involve getting something, like he said there, UN boots on the ground. Does Putin see that as provocation? Then you look at what's going on, of course, with Finland, with Sweden joining NATO. If there is a no-fly zone, goodness gracious me, it might not take much for Putin to kind of press that big red button, mightn't it? But there we go. Right, we've got a couple of views. We've got loads of views, actually. Thank you, everyone who's been getting in touch with us. And just some people just saying that we are... I can't try and find the name on this one now. Basically saying it's the best way to start their day, this show. And I thought that was a lovely message. So thank you very, very much for sending that in. A little bit of a confidence boost there, but... Yeah, lots of issues with the two topics that we had right at the start of the show here. Of course, we went in with 13-year-old there charged with terrorism offences. Then we've had Chernobyl as well, and people blaming the parents, really, saying that, look, are the parents encouraging this? Why aren't the parents doing more to stop it? They should be monitoring their computers, etc. But, yes, well, we've gone from terrorism to Chernobyl, and we're about to go to Wagatha Christie, I think.
Yes, we will, but we'll be getting to that after the break and more of your views, so stay tuned.
It's 10:33. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The Chancellor is under mounting pressure from businesses, charities and MPs to produce a package of support after inflation hit a 40-year high. There are calls for a windfall tax on oil and gas companies that have benefited from high global prices. Rishi Sunak said in a speech last night that the government's prepared to help families cope with rising inflation. Staying with the rising cost of living, the policing minister has said officers shouldn't let shoplifters go if they're stealing food out of desperation. Kit Malthouse says the law should be applied equally to all. That's in response to the Chief Inspector of Constabulary, Andy Cook. He suggested police should use their discretion when handling cases involving desperate shoplifters. The United Nations is warning that Russia's invasion of Ukraine could soon cause a global food crisis that may last for many years. Its Secretary-General says the situation could lead to tens of millions of people facing food insecurity and famine. Antonio Guterres has appealed to Russia to allow the safe and secure export of grain stored in Ukrainian ports. Royal Mail says it'll need to increase its prices and cut costs by more than £350 million amid rising inflation. The firm says it faces higher wage demands and steeper energy and fuel costs. Royal Mail insists no further job losses are planned. That's after announcing in January that 700 managerial positions would go. And archaeologists in England have a new mystery to solve. They've unearthed a rare stone circle at a prehistoric ritual site in Cornwall. Aerial photos show a long-buried structure resembling a crooked horseshoe. The meaning behind it, though, is still unclear. TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.239 to the dollar. The pound is 1.18 to the euro. And the price of gold currently stands at £1,471.83 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A very good morning to you all. It's 10:38 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie on GB News. We're live on your TV, online, radio, on the app. You can find us everywhere.
You can indeed. Now, today is the final day of the Wagatha Christie trial in London. You would have had to have been living under a rock or, frankly, on the moon with your fingers in your ears to recap, to have missed this. Anyway, to recap, right, so Rebecca Vardy is suing Colleen Rooney after she publicly accused her of selling private stories about her to the Sun newspaper. But I've got a bit of an issue with that because she didn't really accuse her publicly, I suppose.
It was her account.
Her account.
Which was clever. She
Which
obviously
was
got
very
legal
clever.
advice about that.
Yes, in a kind of way that maybe...
It has been a very dramatic 7-day trial, and our reporter Ellie Costello has been in court every day and sent us the latest on this.
Well, today is the last day of proceedings in this Wagatha Christie trial. It is a case that has dominated the headlines and social media for the past 7 days. So today the final arguments will be read out by both barristers, and then the judge will retire to consider her verdict. But I think whatever the outcome, there isn't going to be a winner in all of this. The only people who are doing well out of this trial are the lawyers. It's like their Christmases and their birthdays have all come at once. It's estimated that both women have spent in total £3 million to get this case to court. It's an eye-watering sum of money. And the general public perception is that this is a massive waste of court time and also a massive waste of money. We've been hearing on GB News over the past few weeks and days that there are people in this country who cannot cannot afford to eat. And there's two women here who are spending millions of pounds having a glorified catfight, if you like, in one of the highest courts in the land. It is not going down well on Twitter with many people. There have been suggestions that this money should have been donated to a charity in Ukraine instead, or to Deborah James, who in the last few days has raised over £6 million for cancer research. Certainly similar to the view of the judge as well, who did ask Colleen Rooney and Rebecca Vardy to settle this matter out of court several times. But of course, that hasn't happened. As you can see behind me, there is a media circus that has stood outside this court for the past 7 days. And when Rebecca Vardy and Colleen Rooney arrive in their cars this morning, there will be a scrum to take photos of them. So this has been a case that has absolutely dominated the headlines. It's provided real entertainment for many, but at the heart of this are two women, two families that have had a really difficult 2.5 years, and they will be very happy for this issue to be dealt with, whatever the outcome may be.
Well, I mean, this sorry saga has resulted in no winners, has it? There will be no winners from this particular situation.
No,
it's a bit like the herd Depp thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but I do wonder if this has somewhat increased people's appetite for a more American-style sort of fly-on-the-wall style courtroom thing, because in America, obviously, they're televised. Well, we have our own version, but in America, courts are terrible. That's your words, not mine. We have, obviously, we don't televise trials in this country, do we? Which might be a good thing, but maybe people have an appetite for that now, given how prolific this trial has been. Yeah. I personally couldn't care less about how this ends up. It has been quite interesting, but I don't really care what millionaires end up doing.
It's just a really strange setup, isn't it, really? And, you know, Wayne Rooney going on about how he had to apparently, at the request of former England manager Roy Hodgson, basically get Jamie Vardy to ask him to get his wife to wind her neck in, you know, and all this stuff just coming out, really. And you just think, why are we doing this? Because it is newsworthy, but, like, why is this clogging up time in our British justice system?
It is insane. Well, anyway, somebody I can hear giggling is our next story, which is more important, I think. Her Majesty, the Queen, opened the brand new Elizabeth line on the Crossrail railway service this week at Paddington Station. It's one of the events helping to kick off her Jubilee celebrations.
Well, of course, all that pomp and ceremony won't be enough to stop the rail unions from conducting strike action on the capital's underground lines.
Yes, it's a move that threatens to cause significant travel disruption in the capital, with tube staff in the RMT union, that's the National Railway Union, threatening to walk out of Euston and Green Park stations in 2 weeks' time.
Oh, well, there we go. That's nice of them, anyway. This is over bullying allegations and, quote, a, quote, toxic working environment. That's what they say, anyway. The capital will be expecting a huge influx of tourists as the Queen celebrates her 70th year on the throne.
Yes, well, we are lucky to be joined in the studio by Simon Calder, who's a travel expert and travel editor at The Independent and a very dear friend of the channel. I could hear you giggling away at that Wagatha Christie trial. I'm assuming it's because you think it's just all a bit petty and pathetic.
Well, we'll see what the court...
Very diplomatic of you. Well, let's talk about the more important part. Did you want to add something?
Oh, no. That's all I have to say about that.
Whose side are you on?
Well, these strikes, look, we were speaking to one of our royal correspondents, and we were like, what should people be doing, looking forward to when the Jubilee celebrations? And he said people should get down to London. That's where the real actions will be happening. This threatens that, doesn't it?
Well, look, I've looked very carefully into what is happening right across the country in terms of rail for the Jubilee weekend. And actually, Network Rail, which normally takes every possible opportunity with a public holiday to say, effectively, right, we're closing this line, this line, this line, they've kept pretty much all the lines to and from London going. There's going to be quite a lot of work going on in the Manchester-Victoria area. There's also a few isolated cancellations of services in South Wales between Pontypridd and Merthyr Tydfil, but generally things are going to be pretty good right through the weekend. In terms of the strikes, I've spoken to Transport for London. They say that the industrial action by their staff at Green Park and Victoria and Euston stations should not have an effect on people's journeys. But worth mentioning also that we have on the Victoria, the Central and the Jubilee lines, we have strikes which are taking place in a dispute over the night tube, and that's going to reduce the night services on the Friday and the Saturday nights of that weekend. And you mentioned the Elizabeth line. which is coming in £4 billion and 3.5 years late. Yes, the Queen officially opened this, but there are no trains running for the public yet. First train from Abbey Wood in southeast London on Tuesday at 6:30 a.m. and from Paddington at 6:33 a.m. I'll be on board the latter one. And there, of course, won't be any services on Sundays for a few more months, except over Jubilee weekend, the 5th of June, they're running a special Sunday service on the Elizabeth line, as they should.
Can you clear something up for me on this, please? Because there's one... So I live in Maidenhead at the moment.
Oh.
And there's... I don't think anyone's ever said that about and they're supposed to have Crossrail going through there, but I can't see any sign of it.
What you've got at the moment, and it is a continuing disaster, this.
Right.
And thanks very much to everybody in the rest of the country for the tax you've been paying for this £19 billion project.
Wow.
By the way. But at the moment, you have two flavours of trains. You have GWR green trains, and you have TfL rail trains, and they're sort of purple-ish. OK.
And
now, those purple trains are going to be rebranded as the Elizabeth line from Tuesday, but they're only going to get to Paddington, and only sometime within the next year will they be extended to run all the way through to Canary Wharf, through central London, some of them going to Shenfield, many of them going to Abbey Wood. So your travel opportunities will suddenly blossom, but
they'll be boundless.
They will.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sorry, I probably should have had a conversation with you about my very specific commute to work off air, but thank you very much for filling us in on that anyway.
So if people, which they will be, are planning to come to London or in this direction to the south for the Jubilee weekend, what would be your advice to them then? Should they anticipate travel disruption or not?
No, I would say you're going to be probably pretty well looked after. All the train companies realise that it's a really important weekend. We're not expecting any strikes over the main network. However, also on Tuesday, which is when the Elizabeth line opens, we are going to get the result of a ballot of 40,000 members of the RMT union who work for Network Rail and the train operating companies. And the General Secretary, Mick Lynch, says our members are extremely motivated to deliver a huge yes vote, which would see the first national rail strike in decades. Wow. And yesterday, the Transport and Salaried Staff Association, the White Collar Rail Union, said, well, we're all going to go on strike unless we get a pay rise that keeps pace with inflation. That would be 9%. And I'm afraid I can't see many people in the public sector getting that sort of pay rise.
No, absolutely not. Look, thank you so much. Great to have you back on the show, as always. And I'm sure it won't be long until you are sat right there again, whizzing us all through, of course, what's been going on in the world of travel. Thank you very, very much. Right, OK, so what are the strikes going to mean for the capital's roads, with buses and taxis likely to be overrun with tourists, commuters, and, of course, various things like that? Well, let's talk to Grant Davies, who is a London cabbie, chairman of the London Cab Drivers Association. Last time I had you on the show, you were having a toe-to-toe row with a cyclist, which we love to see. So, how's life?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Enjoying the weather. And, yeah, all good, thank you.
So, what's going to be going on? You're going to be picking up the slack, are you, when the Queen's Jubilee weekend is going and, you know, the unions are sabre-rattling? It's going to be people like you keeping this capital moving.
Well, that's exactly what I'd like to say to your viewers and listeners today. Once again, the London cab trade that's been in London, serving London for over 300 years, we will be out in force, making sure the public, the great British public, gets to where they want to go and back again in a lovely London black cab. So do not worry, do not put off coming to London. If you can get to a mainline station or an underground station that's not one of the Green Park or Euston, two stations that I believe are involved, then, yeah, come out, look for a cab, put your hand up, we'll get you in the back and get you where you want to go without a surge price in sight.
That's great. And I do want to ask you, because there's lots of apps and things popping up nowadays to sort of rival sort of traditional cab companies, not least the black cab, and people might turn to Uber or other services like that. In today's age where, you know, things like Uber are easy to use, why should people use a black cab? I want you to sell it to people who might consider using other services.
Well, the thing with it, if you're getting a London black cab, you know, everything's everything's kosher. I mean, the driver's licence, the vehicle's licence, we're all fully insured, full DBS check. And as I said before, which is really important, we've got companies like Uber, when the demand goes up, the public are then expected to pay, I put my teeth in, pay a surge price, where in the black cab, the fare is the fare. Whether it's raining, it's sunny, the fare's the same. And we certainly don't feel that the travelling public should have to pay more to get around London just because it's busy. It's ridiculous. We've never agreed with it, never understood why Transport for London laid down and let them get away with it. No, we're here for the public, 365 days a week.
Good stuff, mate. Good stuff. Fantastic. Fantastic. We'd love to see you. Great to have you back on the show. That's Grant Davis there, of course. He's London cabbie and chairman of the London Cab Drivers Club, a fantastic ambassador for what is a very British institution.
Yeah,
Black Cab.
absolutely. I've started using black cabs more and more instead of the other apps, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's just a more pleasant experience.
It is.
I'm not going to lie to you. You know, the whole Uber thing, they're freelancers. I do sometimes, especially if it's late, I do feel a bit awkward being dropped off at my home address by,
I've had some terrible experiences.
Driving an Uber.
Absolutely shocking experiences in an Uber. I had a driver who pulled over to urinate into a plastic bottle, which was not particularly great, to be honest with you. I just got out, he asked me where I was going. I was like, well, anywhere but here, obviously. This is nuts.
Well, to be fair, once in an Uber, I did, the guy was like, I'm starving, do you mind if I pop to a McDonald's drive-through? And he did actually offer me to buy me something. So
but also that's the kind of thing that just shouldn't happen in a cab.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that kind of thing would happen if you're in a black cab, really.
I've had some rather whiffy experiences as well on numerous occasions, which have not been particularly good. But anyway, right, OK, let's whiz you through some of the headlines of the day that you might have missed. So, former US President George Bush made what some people called a Freudian slip during an address to his institute, the Bush Center, yesterday, where he was condemning Russian President Vladimir Putin's political corruption and the invasion of a sovereign country. Just see if you can spot what he said wrong here.
And the decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq, anyway. 75.
Gosh. You've got to learn. That's not a Freud. That is the Freudian slip of the century. That's a Freudian catapult.
That's a Freudian catapult.
That's not Freudian. My favourite thing is how dramatically he did.
Yeah, and then gave a little nod, to say, actually, I did something similar myself. But it reminds me of some George Bushisms. OK, it's like I dream of a world one day where humans and fish can coexist peacefully, and all this kind of stuff that he used to come
My
out.
favourite was, remember when he struggled to say, what was it? Fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice. He got so confused saying that.
It's just saying in Texas.
And then he's like, well, the point is you can't get fooled again.
You can't get fooled again, yeah. I think, hang on, Bushisms, I think we agree, the past is over. Yeah, they misunderestimated me. This is a brilliant one. I mean, George Bush. Having said that, Joe Biden. Do you not think every time he talks, it looks like he's in pain? He just gives this thing regularly where he clutches his own head as he's talking, as if just talking and just thinking causes him some immense personal discomfort. Anyway, right, moving on. An out-of-control seagull in Devon has robbed a Tesco Extra of £300 worth of stock. So Steven Seagull, as he's been named by locals,
appears to be particularly partial to mini cheddars.
Monster Munch and Tangy Cheese Doritos. Sorry, everyone who's listening on radio. There's a video of a seagull robbing a Tesco, and it is great value. After basically it stole loads of stuff.
Not just loads of stuff, 17 kilograms worth of stuff, which is insane. I mean, many chips or whatever, not chips, Doritos, would you have to steal for it to make up 17 kilograms?
Oh, I've lost it. Sorry, I've absolutely lost it. Right, OK. Now a story from the US. OK, come on. Texas resident Kelsey Golden was busy trying to work from home when her 2-year-old son took her phone for what she imagined was to take photos of himself.
Yes, but instead he managed to unlock her phone and order 31 McDonald's cheeseburgers to their home at a cost, to be fair, of $62, which isn't too bad. He even tipped the DoorDash driver, that's the app, who had to travel over 6 miles to their home from the nearest McDonald's. He tipped him $17 for his trouble.
Oh, no. So Mum Kelsey ended up posting an advert to her local community page for free burgers after she said the toddler ate just half of a single one from his massive, massive order. That sounds like when I get back from a night out and I'm starving on
deliberately
burgers.
ordered
$92 worth of burgers. But anyway, keep all your thoughts coming into us on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Thank you very much to all of these views. We obviously got a bit pressed for time there, talking about a seagull robbing a Tesco's and stuff like that. But don't worry, we will go to those views very, very shortly. But we're going to take a very quick break. Stay tuned.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Following the very lively thunderstorms that affected parts of south and southeast England last night, most places are dry today. Sunny spells, still a few showers around, mainly towards the northwest, closer to this area of low pressure. But the storms have now moved through, a legacy of cloudier skies across central and eastern England for a time, perhaps even the odd light shower. But even these will tend to fade away. The cloud will break up. Sunny spells coming through. The best of the sunshine, eastern and southern Scotland, northern England, Wales and the southwest by the afternoon. And although we're not going to reach the dizzy heights that we saw earlier in the week, temperatures are going to reach the high teens, low 20s in most places. Nevertheless, a bit breezier and cloudier for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, 1 or 2 showers here, especially for the far west of Scotland, and some more persistent showery rain coming in for the evening and overnight here as well. But elsewhere, a dry start to the night, increasingly cloudy and relatively mild, most places seeing lows of 9 to 12 Celsius. But we start with a tongue of light rain extending into parts of central and southern England. And that turns a bit heavier as it reaches the southeast later in the morning. And some thunderstorms are not too far away over the near continent. They'll need watching. Otherwise, outbreaks of rain pushing into the west, turning to heavy showers in many places, interspersed by bright spells. And a cooler day to come, temperatures reaching 16 to 19 Celsius. Some more persistent rain crossing Scotland and northern England during Friday evening. Showers further south tending to fade away, but continuing for a time in eastern England. And then clear spells overnight. And with high pressure building from the south for Saturday, actually most places will see a fine day. The best of the sunshine will be in the south. Further showers on Sunday.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's 2 questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Wow, yes, very good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie, and Mercy Murky on your TV, radio and online. And we're with you all the way through until midday with, as ever, an action-packed show. Loads of chat, loads of views as well, some of them yours.
Yes, and make sure you get in touch with those views on our usual email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll get to those throughout the final hour. But first, it's the latest news with Rhiannon.
Thank you, Mercy. Good morning. It's coming up to 1 minute past 11. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The Met Police has concluded its investigation into alleged breaches of COVID regulations at Downing Street and Whitehall. In total, 126 referrals have been made for fixed penalty notices for breaches of lockdown rules during the pandemic. In a statement, the Met Police said 53 men and 73 women have received fines. The names, it said, won't be released. The Chancellor is under mounting pressure from businesses, charities and MPs to produce a package of support after inflation hit a 40-year high. There are calls for a windfall tax on oil and gas companies that have benefited from high global prices. Rishi Sunak said in a speech last night that the government is prepared to help families cope with rising inflation. That as the Treasury is under increasing pressure to bring benefit and pension rises forward to help those struggling with the cost of living. And staying with the rising cost of living, the policing minister has said officers shouldn't let shoplifters go if they are stealing food out of desperation. That's in response to the Chief Inspector of Constabulary, Andy Cook. He suggested police should use their discretion when handling cases involving desperate shoplifters. Kit Malthouse, though, says the law should be applied equally to all.
Much as I have great respect for Andy, and I suspect his words have been taken out of context, as they say, I find that a bit old-fashioned thinking. I mean, from my point of view, the primary rule is that justice should be blind. Also, this idea that crime will fluctuate with the economy is a bit old-fashioned thinking, I'm afraid. We've seen over the last 20 years points at which crime has risen when times have been good, and when it's fallen when times have been less good. Yeah, we now need to be smart about acquisitive crime, burglary, robbery, car crime, and drive them down even further.
The United Nations is warning that Russia's invasion of Ukraine could soon cause a global food crisis that may last for years. The UN Secretary-General says the situation could lead to tens of millions of people living in poorer countries facing food insecurity and famine. Antonio Guterres has appealed to Russia to allow the safe and secure export of grain stored in Ukrainian ports. Russia and Ukraine account for nearly a third of global wheat supplies. The wars led to soaring global prices. Meanwhile, Moscow claims that over 750 more Ukrainian fighters have surrendered in the Russian-held port city of Mariupol. Negotiations have been ongoing between the two sides to evacuate soldiers held up in the Azovstal steelworks. According to Russia, it brings the total number of Ukrainian fighters to leave the plant since Monday to 1,730. It's unknown how many remain. Ukrainian officials have declined to comment on the fate of the soldiers. The government failed in its duty of care to doctors during the coronavirus pandemic. That's according to the British Medical Association. Its own review into the government's handling of the crisis highlights the lack of personal protective equipment in the early stages. It found that more than 4 in 5 doctors said they didn't feel adequately protected during the first wave of the virus. Royal Mail says it will need to increase its prices and cut costs by more than £350 million amid rising inflation. The firm says it faces higher wage demands and steeper energy and fuel costs. Royal Mail insists no further job losses are planned. That's after announcing in January that 700 managerial positions will go. NHS England says checks for prostate cancer have hit an all-time high. Urgent referrals for urological cancers reached a record level in March, with more than 24,000 men checked. Around 550,000 people checked their risk of developing the disease online during the 6 weeks of an awareness campaign. Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall have arrived in Canada for day 2 of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. They met with the country's Ukrainian community and attended a ceremony to honour Canada's war debt. It's the second day of their royal tour, which celebrates Queen Elizabeth's 7 decades on the throne. And archaeologists in England have a new mystery to solve. They've just unearthed a rare stone circle at a prehistoric ritual site in Cornwall. Aerial photos show the long-buried structure resembling a crooked horseshoe, but the meaning behind it is still unclear. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to Mercy and Patrick with To The Point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie on your TV, radio and online. We've got another hour for you, packed full of all of the day's big stories, so here's what's coming up.
Right then, people. So, how is the government doing with its crime crackdown? We asked, basically, whether Bedfordshire Police and Crime Commissioner Festus Akinbusoye, whether he believes the government should be doing more to help tackle gangs, knives and drugs in his neck of the woods.
Yes, and a new report from the British Medical Association has said the government, quote, failed in its duty of care to our healthcare workers. Our national reporter Paul Hawkins will tell us more.
And finally, nurses and midwives are leaving the NHS at the highest rate for over 4 years. We ask a healthcare professional what the reason behind this could possibly be and whether it will impact your treatment at hospital.
Yes, that's all coming up and much more as well, and you can get in touch with your views. As usual, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We'll make time to read them, we promise.
Yes, we will indeed. Right, OK, but first, Mercy gives her views on changing perceptions of race during the Queen's 70-year reign.
Hello, I'm Mercy Moroki, and not that it's relevant, but I'm a Kenyan-born British woman. I'm not Mercy, a black woman, because, well, I'm literally not black. I'm a kind of walnut brown with hints of mahogany. My mum is a chestnut brown, and my daughter a sort of cinnamon brown with a dash of terracotta. And I'm certainly not Mercy, a woman of colour, because what the hell does that even mean? A woman of colour as opposed to what exactly? A see-through, translucent woman? Let's see, what else? Well, I was born in Kenya. I grew up in Northamptonshire. I consider Northampton my hometown. I was a shameless teacher's pet growing up. I was that annoying kid who always did their homework on time, always put their hand up, and who won pretty much everything. Sorry, kids, we can't all be born great, can we? I can still recite a 36-line poem I learnt when I was 10. I wanted to be an animator when I was younger, then a vet, then a banker, then Prime Minister, because I was a bit of a strange kid who was a bit of a nerd. I was quite a rebel in my teens. Did I smoke behind the school and drink in the park with my friends at 4 p.m? Maybe. Sorry, Mum, but don't drink and smoke, kids. And I was actually suspended from school once, but that's a story for another time. And then I got pregnant at 18. I'm sarcastic, I'm very candid, I make rude jokes sometimes. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and I'm completely OK with that. And talking of tea, I really love a cup of tea and a bottle of Lucozade, the original, of course, not the orange one. I'm not an animal. And I really like meat. Pork in particular. The countryside's my natural habitat. I love DIY. I consider it therapeutic, actually. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. Now, why am I telling you my whole life story? Well, the point is, the least important thing about me, and in fact everyone, should be what colour they are. I'm a lot of things. What I am not is someone who can be reduced to their race. Nobody can. Because honestly, who bloody cares what colour I am or what colour anyone is? I don't. But enough of me. What I'm actually getting at is that it turns out that Brits agree with me. People actually aren't that fussed about what race people are, which may come as a startling shock to the Britain is racist doom-mongering catastrophisers who think most people are genuinely walking around filled with venom and rage against brown people. In this new piece of research by British Future, 3/4 of Brits say social diversity is actually part of the UK's culture, considerably higher than 10 years ago. 84% wouldn't mind having an ethnic minority prime minister, with a majority of people saying the PM's ethnicity doesn't matter at all to them, and 1/4 of Brits even saying they would welcome an ethnic minority PM. Colour of skin and birthplace have no significance to being British anymore. 3 in 4 people don't consider that you have to be white to be regarded as British. The overwhelming majority tie being British to how much people contribute to British society rather than how much melanin they have in their skin. On top of that, 80% of people do not think racism is getting worse. And this includes, and this is an important fact, 3/4 of ethnic minority people who don't think racism is getting worse. Now, these are not perfect figures, obviously, but they're figures I can actually live with. They're figures that bust some of the myths that do the rounds in some liberal metropolitan circles, that British life is steeped in racist attitudes. I actually pity people who think race is the most significant thing about somebody. How miserable it must be to be so small-minded and so reductive. I love this country, I do, and that's controversial to say, believe it or not, these days. I think we're absolute light years away from most of the world in terms of race relations, and I'll make no apologies for holding that view.
Why were you suspended from school?
Can't possibly say, I'll tell you later.
OK.
I don't
It must have been bad.
I don't regret a thing. That's all I have to say. Yes, I did it and I don't regret it.
Right, OK. Well, there we go. That got weird quick. No, but I think a really, really interesting point, that, isn't it? And also, just about those kind of changing perceptions of race. I'm glad you said a lot of that stuff, really, because I refuse to believe, or just because I don't see it, that there are loads of people there who really hold out-and-out racist views in this country. I mean, there are races, there are just racist people, right? But they exist all over the world. In fact, you could argue there's a lot of racism in parts of Africa or parts of the Middle East, for example. Certainly there is. So, the idea that we're kind of unique in this sense is a nonsense. Yeah. But I don't really think that the vast majority of people in this country really, frankly, care about anything to do with anyone's colour or anything like that.
I mean, that's not my experience. What I think is always funny is, people say, do they talk about their lived experience? And they say, you can't dismiss the fact that I think Britain is a racist country because this is my lived experience, so it must be true. And then when somebody says, well, my lived experience is that it's not a racist country, suddenly your lived experience doesn't matter.
It's massively different.
So lived experience only matters if you think, if you have negative things to say about Britain. My experience, and I know it's my mum's experience and my family's experience too, is that most people just really aren't that bothered.
No.
Like, who's bothered? Seriously. I mean, obviously there are people, but why would people be walking around, when they've got so many other things going on, genuinely judging people and hating people because of their ethnicity? The vast majority of people, and I do have to stress, I'm very aware there's a minority of people who do have those views, but going about your daily life, personally, me, I haven't experienced that.
No, I agree. And I do think as well that there's a difference between maybe complaining or having views about mass immigration, complaining or having views about inclusivity or whether or not someone integrates, for example, and disliking someone singularly because of their race. Those two are very, very different.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Massively different things.
Yeah.
And, and that's the thing. So I think we're able to have conversations. We should be able to have conversations about whether or not, certain numbers, this, that and the other. But actually, in reality, if you... Like that poll there that said, what was it? Something like 84% of people wouldn't mind having an ethnic minority prime minister. I think you'd have to go quite a long way, actually, to find someone who goes, I actually would overtly mind if our Prime Minister was an ethnic minority.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think religion plays a role more than that. I do think if, this might be controversial to say, but it's just an opinion, I do think that if you were to poll the British public, more people might be perhaps not opposed, but would mind more having a Muslim Prime Minister because we're a Christian country than having somebody who was an ethnic minority because, that's neither here nor there. I think it's the cultural aspects that matter, and religious is one of those. So if people had a Prime Minister who they felt was too removed from them culturally, then they might have a problem. But I'm not sure skin colour factors too much into that.
No, exactly. Yes, exactly that. Right, OK, we'll keep your views coming in. GBViews at gbnews.uk. A lot of you have been indeed getting in touch, and a lot of compliments for your monologue your monologue there. People just saying, yes, it's nice to get to know you a bit better as well, because you revealed some some stuff in there, including, crucially, that we can't let this go, people. She was suspended from school, right? And we're going to have to find out why.
I did. I was for a short time.
Yeah, I'll get to the bottom of this. Right, OK, anyway. We're going to move on now from that and talk about the cost of living, because inflation has risen to a record high, so 9%. And many of us are really feeling the pinch. But our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, has been out and about finding out how people are reacting to this cost of living crisis.
Yes, well, yesterday's news about the cost of living crisis, the rise in inflation in April to 9% according to the Consumer Price Index, will come as much of a worry for a lot of people, but it's something that they've already been feeling. It's something that they've been feeling particularly at this point in time because of their energy prices, gas and electric, that 54% rise in the price cap that came in at the start of April. That's going to have a massive impact. I think it's 3/4 on the inflation that they're feeling. Of course, things like the bus tickets that they're getting, 10, 20p, 30p more, even more in some parts of the country. So I've been speaking to people on the Arnold High Street about the cost of living crisis that they're facing and how it's causing problems for them in their household.
We're still shopping the same, but just trying to cut down where we can. But luckily, you know, it's not affecting us too much. But you know, we're both on pensions and we're okay. But I can imagine families with young children, it's hitting them the hardest.
We don't use the car as much as we used to, because I mean we've got scooters, so we get about and that. But my husband had an accident to work and he's disabled. He's been like that since he was 44 and he's now 71. And of course, as things increase, the pension doesn't increase to come in with the line of the cost of living. But we just have to manage.
Shopping-wise, I notice it more because I shop for a neighbour that's really vulnerable and he buys the same stuff every week and his shopping has gone up by £10 to £15 a week now.
Can you tell me a little bit about your utility bills and how you might be using different things at home and how you have to manage that?
Well, fortunately for us at the moment, it's warm. We don't need it on, do we? You know, it's not something I'm using at the moment. Stay warm. I'm not bothered.
What I've had to do, I've had to adjust the way I live, my style of living, cut down on certain things to make sure I've got money to compensate for bills which are more important. So I have to assimilate what's important and what isn't and work out my money budget that way to pay for bills.
Well, it's made me skint. It's made me not have a lot of money at all, and the cost of food and everything when you haven't got a lot of money is ridiculous at the moment.
Electric bills been going up, it's nearly doubled. I've got public transport bills going up about 20p a trip, so I have to get 3 buses just to get to work. So that's 30p each way, so 60p a day, which is about £3-4 a week. And then they give us a pay rise, yeah, but then they put the national insurance up. So they're giving it with one hand, taking it straight off us with the other. What they need to do, instead of taking money off us, the government get more money than us, take it off them. They're getting 75 grand a year. Why? Sitting on the bum doing nothing. Take money off them, not us.
You get a real sense there of the struggle that people are going through, the difficulties that they're facing at this point in time. But yesterday, Rishi Sunak, he spoke to businesses that might be struggling too. He spoke about how in autumn he's hoping that as part of the budget he will be able to lower taxes for businesses in particular to encourage them to innovate, to grow, to train staff as well. But a lot of people that certainly walk on this high street will be really thinking, that's a wee while away, autumn, how are you going to help me today? And I think that still with talk about a cost of living crisis, fixer, a windfall tax, whether something like that would be something that they would employ, it seems that they're still sticking to their guns and saying that it's unlikely that we'll do that. I think that a lot of people are really looking at it thinking that might fix our problems at least quite quickly, if not in the long term.
Gosh, there was a range of views there, wasn't there? Some of them more insightful than others, I think it's fair to say. But, yes, no, interesting stuff.
Yes, well, after the break, the UK winners of the 184 million Euro Millions jackpot have revealed themselves. I'm not sure if that's a great idea, but what would you do with all that money? Let us know, because we'll be getting stuck into that right after this break.
I think I'd reveal myself as well if I won 184 million.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A fine start for most of us following last night's heavy rain in places. Warm sunny spells with just some showers remaining in the far northwest. We've seen some lively weather go through overnight as weather fronts cross the country from the west. High pressure is now building from the south, and so for the vast majority, actually, it's a fine morning. Sunny spells. 1 or 2 showers still possible towards the southeast for a time. Even these get out of the way. And then really showers by the afternoon will be confined to western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, where it will be cloudier and breezier. But for the vast majority, for the rest of Scotland, for England and Wales, sunny spells, light winds, and feeling pleasant enough in that sunshine, with temperatures reaching 23 in London, 19 in Cardiff, 20 in Glasgow, 18 in Belfast. Now, through the rest of the afternoon and into the evening, we're going to see further clear spells for a time for many, further showers for western Scotland and Northern Ireland. They die away for a time overnight, but in the south, well, our attention turns to the continent, where once again some showery rain will start to move in, so that by the end of the night, actually quite a cloudy picture in the south and across central parts of the UK. 12 or 13 degrees here, 9 to 11 with clear spells for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Then during Friday morning, outbreaks of rain or showers for many southern parts of the country, and the threat of some intense thunderstorms just passing by the southeast, most likely staying just far enough away, but we'll keep an eye on those. And for the rest of the country, it's rain or showers moving in from the west, and temperatures returning to around average for the time of year. Saturday brings with it plenty of fine weather, particularly in the south, still 1 or 2 showers for Scotland and Northern Ireland. And Sunday, I think we'll see a few more showers pushing in from the west, temperatures around average.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's 2 questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question. Don't miss it. Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Well, a very good morning, everybody. It's 11:24. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie. I'm Mercy Muroki on at GB News, live on your TV, online and radio this morning. And we've got a very interesting story coming for you now.
Yes, we have. We're going to be talking about Jeff Moody, who's the winner of the record-breaking €984 million millions. OK, Jeff Moody is not... We're going to be talking to Jeff Moody. Jeff Moody is not the winner, but €184 million millions jackpot somebody has won. It's a couple from Gloucestershire who became the biggest ever UK national lottery winners when they scooped the prize just last week. We're going to be talking about that in just a second. And I want you to tell us what you do with the money.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea what I would do.
It's absolutely certain that if our reporter Jeff Moody had won 184 million quid, he would not still be a reporter here. But yes, no, exactly. And yeah, well, so actually there was a Spanish journalist. Actually, it's very on brand this for old Jeff. But there was a Spanish video journalist, and she thought she'd won the lottery. OK, and she was on air. OK, and she quit her job live on air. And it turned out she'd won like €10.
That's kind of retaliation, isn't it? That's karma coming back to bite you.
Exactly that. But we want to know what you would do with 184 million quid. I think it's pretty clear what I would do with it. I'd be found
dead,
face down in the water somewhere near my yacht in the Bahamas, you know, and that's the way I'd have to go.
Yeah, I don't know. I do not know. I'm not a big spender.
I think, are we supposed to say charity? Oh, of course, we are raising money for charity at the minute, actually, just giving it on.
By the way, on the point of not being a big spender, somebody, who was it, Patricia, has said, Mercy, please put me out of my misery and tell me where I can buy those beautiful blouses you wear. Well, a lot of the clothes I wear are made by my lovely mother. So my mum made this dress yesterday. People have been asking me. I got home and she was like, I made you a dress. I wish I could show the bottom, because the bottom's even better. But, yeah, my mum is responsible.
There you go. A Muroki classic. Good stuff. All right, we can go to Jeff Moody now. Jeff, thank you very much for joining us. Yes, there he is. Good stuff. Right, so you were wrongly announced, Jeff, as the winner. As the winner of 184 million quid. Oh, can we hear him?
Yeah, no. Oh, no.
Jeff, we're really sorry.
We'll be back to you in just a second, Jeff.
Oh, that's a shame. I think there were those rich people behind him as well.
Those rich fellas.
Yeah. Would you reveal, though, if you'd won the lottery, would you tell people? Because everyone would be like, can I have a tenner?
No, the thing with you, I don't think if you ever did win, you should tell people, because I think you're quite, I was going to say a yes man, but I'll find another term. You're very generous. You just, if people ask you, can I have a bit...
Especially generous at the bar.
You'd be saying yes to everybody.
Yeah.
And you'd end up just spending half of it on...
Well, I do that anyway. I look at my bank account.
A yes man in a nice giving way.
Yeah. Well, OK, thank you. That's good.
Yeah, there was a compliment in there somewhere.
Good. Yes, but I wonder what you'd spend it on. So I think, obviously you'd go, I imagine, property. You get a few properties for that. I think I'd like to do something. I would like to, properly learn how to fly or things like that and get a plane or whatever.
I wouldn't trust you on a plane.
Well, I did do it for a Challenge Christie.
After nearly dying in the process.
Yeah, not just that. I nearly took out most of Chipping Norton, Soho Farmhouse and one of our producers.
Yeah.
But all in all, it was a good day out. So, yes, no, I actually only played the lottery once or twice. But once I lost my ticket, right? Well, I didn't check. So I'll never know. I could be that guy, couldn't I? Who's like, actually, please, this person get in touch. You've won 180 million quid. And there I am just still shopping at Lidl.
Yeah. It's quite unfortunate, though, how some of them turn out, because there have been lots of winners in the past who have infamously just ended up broke, on benefits, unemployed, with addictions, that kind of thing, after having won millions of pounds. So to be honest, I think it's probably not a great idea for people to go from having a relatively normal amount to having tens of millions and being one of the richest people.
I don't know. The people do say they need a bit of aftercare, don't they? But then also part of me thinks, that's what being an adult's all about. There was the King of Chavs. Do you remember the King of Chavs? No? So this guy, I'll get his name up now, let's have a quick Google. So King of Chavs, right, was a guy, massive chav, and he won the lottery. Michael Carroll, there we are, nice guy. And he won the lottery.
And we have the lottery winners just there for our TV and online viewers. We're looking at images right now of the couple who have won that £184 million prize. They're a couple from Gloucestershire, and they're the biggest ever UK national lottery winners. They scooped the prize last week. They're obviously, as you can imagine, looking incredibly happy, and to be precise, they've won 184,262,800.
Here's a hanger on already. Yeah, please can I have a tenner? Please give me a tenner. I believe that you're wadded now.
So that is an incredible amount. I wonder what they'll do with it. So it's a gentleman and his wife there, looking incredibly happy, drinking champagne as you would do if you had just won that amount of money. So now everybody knows who they are. I'm sure their neighbours and their family and friends will be busy on their phones now, texting them. Giving them compliments. I've never told you how nice you look,
Yeah, exactly. You know what we've always got on?
Yeah, we're like brothers, aren't we?
We've been like... I just think, you know what is nice? It's like your success is like my success in a way.
We go back ages, don't we?
Yeah, it almost feels like I've won.
Remember that £5 I lent you back in 1984?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, fantastic. I mean, look, well done to them. I mean, it's an incredible thing. Do you get it all? Is it tax-free, is it, the lottery win? I think it is, isn't it? I think you just... So you just get into your bank account 184 million quid.
Yes, that is...
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable, yes.
Unbelievable. Right, OK.
Let's go to the inbox. Let's see some of your views.
Right, so if I won 185 million quid, I would buy a home in Newmarket, buy a string of racehorses and watch them on gallops in the morning and then go to the races in the afternoon. That's from Bill. Good shout, that, Bill. I like that. That's solid stuff. Solid stuff.
Lots of emails coming in about racism in Britain. There's a new report that's just come out, new polling showing most people wouldn't mind an ethnic minority prime minister. I don't think racism is getting worse.
No.
Basically debunking a lot of the myths that we hear. Lots of people are actually saying they're blaming some people on the left and woke people, the left-wing concept of sort of institutional racism and all this things like that. Dee says it's a concept that divides the country, and she says, I wouldn't care if the prime minister was a different skin colour to mine. So lots of you echoing that same sentiment, really, just saying you don't see race, although, there are some of you perhaps don't share that sentiment. But as I said, it's not every single person. No. It's a minority of people who hold those views.
No, absolutely, it is. Just over one more. No name on this one, but it says, so this is obviously a couple won 184 million quid on the lottery, right? So it would have been better to have 184 millionaires than one huge payout to one winner. I think that's quite an interesting point, that, actually.
Yeah, that's true.
All about wealth generation.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a way to do a kind of a distribution lottery where you have this big pot of money and maybe even nominations, perhaps. If people nominate, local heroes to receive the £1 million.
We could make millionaires out of normal people. Just very quickly, because I was rudely interrupted there by a couple who won the lottery. I was, of course, talking about the King of Chavs, Michael Carroll. And he won the lottery. He won loads of money on the lottery, obviously, that's what the lottery is. And bought a massive house and, built, a car racing track and was and obviously did rather a lot of everything else as well. And he spent it all. And I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying he's working as a bin man now. But anyway, there we go.
Nothing wrong with
that. I'm just saying, no longer a millionaire. Yeah. Right, after the break. The British Medical Association said the government failed to protect NHS workers at the beginning of the pandemic. So it's a big story to digest this. But before that, here's a look at this morning's news.
Good morning, it's 11:33. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The Met Police has concluded its investigation into alleged breaches of COVID regulations at Downing Street and Whitehall. In total, 126 referrals have been made for fixed penalty notices for breaches of lockdown rules during the pandemic. In a statement, the Met Police said 53 men and 73 women have received fines. The names, it said, won't be released. Boris Johnson has paid one fine already. The Prime Minister hasn't, at this stage, received notification of another. The Chancellor's under mounting pressure from businesses, charities and MPs to produce a package of support after inflation hit a 40-year high. There are calls for a windfall tax on oil and gas companies that have benefited from high global prices. Rishi Sunak said in a speech last night that the government's prepared to help families cope with rising inflation. Staying with the rising cost of living, the policing minister has said officers shouldn't let shoplifters go if they're stealing food out of desperation. Kit Malthouse says the law should be applied equally to all. That's in response to the Chief Inspector of Constabulary, Andy Cook. He suggested police should use their discretion when handling cases involving desperate shoplifters. The United Nations is warning that Russia's invasion of Ukraine could soon cause a global food crisis that may last for years. Its Secretary-General says the situation could lead to tens of millions of people facing food insecurity and famine. Antonio Guterres has appealed to Russia to allow the safe and secure export of grain stored in Ukrainian ports. And as we've just been hearing, the UK's biggest ever lottery winners have just been revealed. Joe and Jess Thwaite won a record-breaking £184 million jackpot on a lucky dip ticket. The Gloucester couple, who've been married for 11 years, say it's now time to dream. Certainly is. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.241 to the dollar. The pound is 1.182 to the euro. And the price of gold currently stands at £1,474.48 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for physical investment.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, OK, it's 11:38. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie. I'm Mercy Murky on GB News, and we're live on your TV, online and radio, as always.
Yes, now the British Medical Association says the government has, quote, failed in its duty of care to protect NHS workers at the start of the pandemic.
So the Doctors' Union published a review saying that staff were let down by the government over a lack of PPE, mental health support and, of course, adequate risk prevention strategies.
Yes, well, here to tell us more on this is our national reporter, Paul Hawkins. Good morning, Paul. Many people won't be surprised, I don't think anybody will be surprised that the government failed NHS workers. Just tell us a bit more about this report.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mercy. I mean, the BMA have been banging on about the way the government responded to the pandemic for months, technically for years. Indeed, that's how long the pandemic's been going on for. So this report essentially puts into writing the vocal criticism that we've heard about. It's one of 5 reports that the BMA are putting together, and it's a pretty thorough piece of work. Those 5 reports, by the way, are going to be submitted to the public inquiry into COVID-19, and it's a pretty thorough piece of work. It takes in reviews and surveys, evidence and data from thousands of doctors, many of them frontline, and we know that there were PPE shortages. It talks about the risk to doctors and other frontline staff to their physical health. It also talks about a lack of risk assessments and also the impact on doctors' mental health as well as their physical health. So this is an incredible statistic that comes out of the report. In the year to January 2022, the BMA's counselling service saw a year-on-year rise of 173%. They went from 200 calls a month to 800 calls a month. And some of the testimony very worrying. One doctor in England said that the therapy helped tremendously, but they felt suicidal at times. Another said they're suffering post-traumatic stress. Another one says, we were expected to mentor, support and teach the junior doctors who were utterly unprepared for death, and neither were we. There are a number of recommendations in the report, such as continuing with the pandemic preparedness exercises, being better at providing PPE, etc., and also modernising and improving ventilation in NHS buildings. The government says it's very grateful to NHS staff for working through the pandemic. It's putting £36 billion into surgical hubs, 160 community diagnostic centres and 50,000 extra nurses, and it says lessons will be learned from the pandemic, and it will publish those findings, those lessons that it's learnt rather, at the end of the public inquiry, which is ongoing.
Absolutely good stuff, Paul. Thank you very, very much, as always. Paul Hawkins there reporting in central London about this report that's come out now. What are you chuckling away at?
Oh, I'm not chuckling at that. I was chuckling at the emails I was reading. Definitely not about how the government has treated them.
No. But we have got some of these. We have got a lot of absolutely cracking emails coming in about how you'd spend your 184 million. It's after a couple 184 million on the lottery. Someone saying they'd buy Derby County FC and then they'd just go for a pint as well.
Somebody has said, I'd do a big grocery shop and put fuel in my car. That might cover it.
Hey, there you go. Nice.
No name on that.
A lot of people saying you'd have to... So, there we go. Yeah, if I shared the lottery win amongst all of my family, we'd probably only get about 50 grand a piece. That's from Bernard, obviously got a massive family there. So there we go. Yes, if I won that sort of money, you'd have to find me. That's from Andy, so you need to basically just leg it. I don't really blame you with that one. No name on this one. Actually, well, they've asked not to put a name on this one. They said they'd buy a massive house and move their lover in.
Wow.
Which I think is bold. By the way, that was from a... That was from a woman, by the way.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, are we saying the name on that?
No, absolutely not. Not home wreckers.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
but
right.
that person is clearly...
There we go, yes, indeed. Right, OK, well, moving on to the NHS, the numbers of nurses and midwives sadly leaving the profession now has hit a 4-year high as staff shortage continues to grow.
Yes, well, more than 27,000 people quit the NHS last year, and job pressures, pandemic stress and poor resources for patient care were cited as the main reasons for leaving. That's according to the Nursing and Midwifery Council.
Well, as our health system struggles with recruitment, the latest figures show our country is having to search overseas to recruit more nurses and midwives to fill these gaps.
Yes, well, joining us to help understand all these figures and why this is happening is Dr Mike Isaacs, who's a consultant psychiatrist. Thanks for joining us this morning. We've always had a staffing problem in the NHS. How much worse is it now than it was before the pandemic?
I think it's worse than it was before the pandemic, because there's been a lot of, if you like, natural wastage. People have been retiring. And certainly among senior doctors, a lot of senior doctors who've been approaching at retirement age and have, perhaps been in two minds about whether they should stay on, have retired for a number of reasons, not just the stress of the job, although that's part of it, but also because we are significantly penalised in tax terms if we stay on too long. So there's a number of factors, a kind of perfect storm, if you like, and so we're looking for more junior staff to replace seniors, and that applies across the disciplines. It's not just medics.
Look, I absolutely understand that. Can I just ask what the changes here, really? Because I think, for example, one of Prince Philip's, I don't know what to say, gaffes, one of his unguarded comments was, of course, about the amount of Filipino people that we have coming over to work in our NHS. I mean, it does seem as though the NHS has always been quite a large recruiter from overseas. So is anything really changing there?
It has been, and the Philippines, for example, trains more nurses than any other single country, as far as I understand. Yes, and the NHS has relied on people from overseas for decades to keep the thing going. That's doctors, nurses, other workers. So yes, that hasn't changed. But what has happened is that people have found the NHS, maybe temporary, not quite attractive enough when they've had other options.
Yeah, and what's the actual morale like then, really? Because part of me wants to say, well, look, if you start working in the NHS, for example, you're doing it for the greater good. There's a wider element to it there. You're not really in it for the money, as it were. But, of course, people do have to live at the end of the day. What's the general morale like?
Depends on who you talk to. It's very patchy, widespread poor morale, but there are areas of good practice, a very solid collegiate support, and that's true across the board in different organisations, different places. I think people are doing their best to maintain the well-being of their workforce, but it's an uphill struggle.
Look, exactly. And can I just say as well, Dr. Mike, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. You have taken the background books to the absolute extreme here now. When we get people on over Zoom, we have people always in front of her. There he is, look at that. You are a fabulously well-read chap, Dr. Mike, surely.
Well, years of it.
Yeah, years of it, absolutely. Well, it shows. No, look, Dr. Mike, thank you very, very much. I know it's a serious topic, but it's great to have you on the show. We'll have to get you back on. All right, Dr. Mike Isaacs, consultant psychiatrist, just discussing really, I suppose why people are quitting loads in the NHS. It is a concern. We need to have retention.
On that books note, it might be a fake. It might be a grief tweet.
One of those fake books selves. Yeah, no, exactly.
I'm sure it's not.
No, he strikes me as a man who is incredibly well read. But right, OK. So I don't know if you watched the football last night. Rangers Football Club suffered a devastating defeat in the Europa League final in Seville last night to Eintracht Frankfurt. They took them all the way to penalties, eventually beating them on 5-4. Really bad, isn't it? I thought it was terrible as well when, the cameras, I don't know whether what you watch, we'll probably be about to do this now, but when some of the news channels had the video of the guy missing his penalty, and then it immediately cuts to a load of crying children in the crowd. You think he already feels bad enough.
Gosh, I wonder how he does feel, because that weight, that pressure on you, I mean, it's something that the average person probably could never get over, surely. I mean, he probably needs severe counselling now.
Well, it's a bit like when we were in the Euros in the final there, Rashford. I mean, Marcus Rashford hasn't really been the same since, so he's probably can't really blame it on that. Right, anyway, OK, so nearly 100,000...
Do you know Marcus Rashford?
Not personally.
Oh, OK.
Why?
Just wondering.
Oh, well, fair enough. Why? Got his number? Nearly 100,000 Rangers supporters took to the Spanish town to watch. That's more than double the amount of fans from the German club. Good stuff.
Yes, well, our Scotland reporter, David Donaldson, is in Glasgow for the hometown reaction. So, David, just give us the significance of what happened yesterday.
Yeah, huge significance. As you say, Rangers took at least 100,000 fans over to Seville, and they made it any way they could, some going via Malaga, some Faro, some going to Madrid and getting a train by hook or by crook. They made it there. Only 10,000 tickets for Rangers fans as well, so it really is quite a testament to the Rangers support that so many were willing to travel with the chance of not getting a ticket. So they were put up in another stadium in Seville where there was a fan zone there, so that certainly helped. But yeah, in terms of the game itself, Rangers must have thought brilliant in the second half. Joe Aribo scoring and putting Rangers in front, and that must have been thinking, well, hang on, this cup's ours. But in true German style, Eintracht Frankfurt battled back. It went to extra time. Then it went to the dreaded penalties, and Aaron Ramsey, the most experienced man on the field in both teams, you would put all your house and your money on him to score. It wasn't the greatest penalty, but it was kept out, and Eintracht Frankfurt won 5-4 on penalty kicks. You talked about the tears there. I have to say, watching them at full time was pretty heart-wrenching stuff when you saw, especially I saw a mother consoling a son who was crying his eyes out, and understandably so. It must have been quite a night for the youngster. And not just him, a lot of other people as well.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, the Scottish fans in general usually really pack out the venues, don't they, especially when they go abroad. But it's a great thing for Rangers, because this club's been through the ringer in recent years, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Scottish fans, as you say, pack it out, and certainly you saw that yesterday with the Rangers fans, the sheer numbers that they took, and hats off to Eintracht Frankfurt as well. They took 50, 60,000 fans as well. Not much trouble, a little bit before the game, but glad to say that we didn't see any ugly scenes that we've seen in previous competitions, so that was certainly good news. The Rangers fans, a real credit to the club, as are the team, because it's a phenomenal journey. I think if you'd asked somebody at the start of the competition, would Rangers be in the Europa League final, then most people would say not in a million years. So you have to hand it to Giovanni Bronckhorst and the Rangers players for an incredible achievement. OK, they didn't win it, but they certainly brought Rangers back to the European spotlight.
Good stuff. And just before I let you get going, feel free not to answer this. Am I allowed to ask you what team you support, or are you going to keep that closely guarded secret?
Well, let's just say it's not Rangers and Celtic, put it that way.
Good stuff. All right, mate. OK, thank you very much.
It's the...
Go on. Is he done? Oh, fair enough. All right, David, look, we lost you. Probably,
I thought he was about to reveal
I thought you were going to let it slip then, David. Anyway, there we go, David Johnson.
Very sunny in there, isn't it?
Nice.
In where was it? Glasgow.
Glasgow Rangers. Right, OK, well, let's just whiz you through some of the stories that you might have missed.
Yeah, we'll try not to do it while laughing the entire time.
Oh, the last one.
Well, cats can apparently recognise the names of other cat friends, according to a new study. What did they do? Talk to cats? Well, you know, scientists from Japan believe that cats are able to link the name of their cat friends to their face without training. The same going for human family members' faces and names.
Well, showing photos of their friends and then playing an audio recording of their name, most of the cats could apparently match the faces and names, with researchers therefore having no idea how they come to learn this.
We're showing images of something that looks like a cat cafe in Japan or something, and it looks like heaven to me. I have to... And that's probably what I would do with £184 million if I won. Just live with loads of cats and dogs and lots of animals.
Yeah, I used to have a cat, Norma.
Is it dead now? Is this how the story's going?
No, it's dead to me. My ex took it. But of course, that just used to spend all the time in the wardrobe. Like, just cowering.
Hiding from you.
Yeah, but then you try and coax it out, and then actually it developed quite a strong catnip problem, and which is not a shock given it's my cat. And anyway, yeah, I think it's somewhere in Aylesbury now, probably, which is maybe the best place for it. MasterCard is launching some new tech that will allow you to make payments using just your hands or face at checkout.
Yes, well, facial recognition and fingerprint scanning are just some of the ways that shoppers will be able to authenticate their payment as opposed to card swiping. Well, the company has already launched their programme in Sao Paulo, Brazil, but plans to roll it out globally by the end of this year. This was inevitable, wasn't it, surely? Because, you know, I use most people use their phone now, tap it when they're checking out. Obviously, your phone, most people's phones are linked to their fingerprint for unlocking and security. So it was inevitable. But the ones where they implant something, that's a bit...
It's a bit weird, isn't it?
It is, but part of me thinks, I'd be quite interested in that.
Maybe that's the future.
Well, that's mainly because I lose all my cards.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, I've got a habit of doing that as well, to be fair. But
I had a man contact me the other day saying, I've just found your wallet and cards, and I thought, I haven't lost my wallet and cards today, have I? So I told him to take a picture of it. He sent me a picture. It's a wallet and cards I lost in August 2021. He said he found it in his letter sort of rack at home. Has no idea how it got there. Very suspicious. So
at least he contacted you, though, to be fair.
Yeah, that's how I knew he couldn't have been lying about it, because he offered to send them, and I said, well, there's no point now because I've cancelled everything. Yeah. But it's just very suspicious.
Very weird. Yeah. Very weird. Anyway, right, OK. Ever looked at a particular... What? Ever looked at a particularly beat-up, destroyed pair of trainers and thought they looked designer? Well, now you might. High-fashion brand...
Balenciaga.
There you go. Has just launched its latest version of its Paris sneaker collection.
Yeah, it features slashed, tattered, distressed, yellowing and dirtied and beaten-up shoes. Those are the sort of categories you can go for. Well, the unique look is supposed to suggest that Paris sneakers are meant to be worn for a lifetime. And, well, let's put it this way. The trainers look like something you get out the back of a skip, and it's hard to explain. They look like they've been chewed by a horse, thrown in a skip.
And then worn by a tramp.
Been there for about 4 years. What Patrick said, and just put on a shop window.
Honestly, seriously.
And get this, they're 1,300 quid.
1,300 quid.
And for our radio viewers, they're disgusting. That's what you.
They're absolutely disgusting. And just imagine a shoe that you kind of would see someone wear during a First World War trench thing, that kind of stuff. Anyway, right, OK, well, look, gosh, that's whizzed by today. Thank you very much, everybody. Great to have you on board with us. And we want to say a huge thank you before we go, don't we?
Yes, we do, because GB News Radio is officially the fastest-growing radio station for UK audiences. Radio listening figures have been released today, and they've told us that 239,000 of you are listening to GB News every week, just on the radio, and over 1.5 million hours of GB News radio have been listened to since we launched in January. That was only 5 months ago, so incredible, and thank you to all.
Yes, our quest for world domination is well and truly on course, isn't it, people? But obviously it's all down to you, this lovely, wonderful, loyal audience. And if you're not listening yet, it's GB News Radio. Very simple, DAB plus digital radio on the radio player and tune-in apps, or, of course, on your smart speaker, or online at gbnews.uk. We are everywhere. You can listen in your car, you can listen at home, you can listen on the move, but right now you're going to have to listen to Gloria De Piero, because she's right here.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Following the very lively thunderstorms that affected parts of south and southeast England last night, most places are dry today. Sunny spells, still a few showers around, mainly towards the northwest, closer to this area of low pressure. But the storms have now moved through. A legacy of cloudier skies across central and eastern England for a time, perhaps even the odd light shower. But even these will tend to fade away. The cloud will break up. Sunny spells coming through. The best of the sunshine, eastern and southern Scotland, northern England, Wales and the southwest by the afternoon. And although we're not going to reach the dizzy heights that we saw earlier in the week, temperatures are going to reach the high teens, low 20s in most places. Nevertheless, a bit breezier and cloudier for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, 1 or 2 showers here, especially for the far west of Scotland, and some more persistent showery rain coming in for the evening and overnight here as well. But elsewhere, a dry start to the night, increasingly cloudy and relatively mild, most places seeing lows of 9 to 12 Celsius. But we start with a tongue of light rain extending into parts of central and southern England. And that turns a bit heavier as it reaches the southeast later in the morning. And some thunderstorms are not too far away over the near continent. They'll need watching. Otherwise, outbreaks of rain pushing into the west, turning to heavy showers in many places, interspersed by bright spells. And a cooler day to come, temperatures reaching 16 to 19 Celsius. Some more persistent rain crossing Scotland and northern England during Friday evening. Showers further south tending to fade away, but continuing for a time in eastern England. And then clear spells overnight. And with high pressure building from the south for Saturday, actually most places will see a fine day. The best of the sunshine will be in the south. Further showers on Sunday.